Have you ever wondered why, when the smoke clears, the groupies disperse and the critics stop counting record sales? The true heavyweights of the instrument, the guys with calluses on their fingertips, tinnitus in their ears, and road dust in their lungs, point to Houses of the Holy as the moment Led Zeppelin stopped being a rock band and became a musical phenomenon that defied the laws of physics? You have to understand the sheer, unadulterated arrogance required to make this record, and arrogance earned not through marketing, but through blood, sweat, and absolute mastery of the analog domain. It is 1973. You are Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, John Paul Jones, and John Bonham. You have just released the untitled fourth album, a monolith of rock history that contains Stairway to Heaven, Black Dog, and When the Levee Breaks. You have essentially won the game. The entire world, from the muddy festivals of England to the arenas of the United States, is begging you to write Led Zeppelin 5. They want more Tolkien battles, more Delta blues plagiarism, and more heavy metal thunder. They want the safety of the known. And what do you give them? You give them a bright, shimmering, weirdly produced record, with a funk pastiche and a time signature you can't dance to, a reggae song that sounds like it's falling down a flight of stairs, and a ballad played on a guitar tuned so strangely it sounds like a harpsichord. This wasn't a commercial calculation or a safe bet. This was a statement of supreme confidence. This was a band looking the world in the eye and saying, "We can do whatever the hell we want, and you will listen because we are that good." The terrifying part is that they were right, but to truly grasp the magnitude of Houses of the Holy, you have to strip away the classic rock radio fatigue and listen to the architecture of the sound with the ears of a producer, not a fan. You need to understand what was happening at Electric Lady Studios with Eddie Kramer behind the board, and why the Headley Grange echo of the previous record was abandoned for something far more dangerous: clarity. The first thing the know-it-alls will tell you is that Zeppelin is about heaviness, but they are wrong because Zeppelin is about light and shade, and nowhere is this more prevalent than on Houses of the Holy. The production on this album is unlike anything else in their catalog. It is not the muddy, cavernous boom of IV. It is crisp, treble-heavy, and layered with a complexity that borders on the obsessive. Jimmy Page, acting as the sonic architect, stepped out of the shadow of the blues and fully embraced the role of the sorcerer. Notice the lack of mud in the low mids. This was intentional. The record is brighter. It breathes. This clarity is unforgiving. There is nowhere to hide in this mix. Every missed stroke, every squeak of the kick drum pedal, which you can hear clearly on The Ocean, every intake of breath is right there in the stereo field. The use of the Rolling Stones mobile studio at Stargroves and the subsequent mixing at Electric Lady created a hybrid sound, part English Manor ambiance, part New York City compression, that defined the sonic fingerprint of the era. Consider the opening attack of The Song Remains the Same, because a lesser band starts a record with a riff, but Zeppelin starts with a manifesto. Originally titled The Overture, this track was meant to be an instrumental prelude, which explains its frantic narrative structure. Let's talk about the tape manipulation, because this is where the purists get uncomfortable, yet it is crucial to the texture. Plant's vocals are slightly sped up, and Page's guitars are layered with varispeed techniques. This wasn't cheating. It was texturing, a way to create a timbre that did not exist in nature. The opening guitar figure is a lesson in counterpoint. Listen to the interplay between the Gibson EDS 1275 12-string and the standard Les Paul overdubs. They aren't just doubling each other. They are weaving a sonic tapestry that mimics a Baroque orchestra. Page isn't playing lead guitar here. He is conducting a symphony of wire and wood, and underneath it, pay attention to the bass. John Paul Jones is not following the root notes. He is playing a melodic counter melody with a distinct punch that drives the song forward with a jazz bassist sensibility. He's using a pick, cutting through the dense mid-range of the guitars. The track moves through distinct movements, shifting dynamics with the fluidity of water. It captures the hysteria of the road, the speed of the lifestyle, not just lyrically, but in the very physics of the audio tape. The tempo pushes and pulls, Not because Bonham couldn't keep time, Bonham was a human metronome, but because the emotion of the track demanded acceleration. It is the sound of a band running towards a cliff edge and knowing they can fly. But the real meat, the moment that separates the casual listener from the devotee, is the transition into the rain song. If you want to understand why Led Zeppelin is superior to their peers, you dissect this track starting with the tuning. Page drops the guitar into a variation of open sus4, often cited as DG-C-G-C-D or C-G-C-G-C-D live. This is not your standard Keef open G. This setup renders standard chord shapes useless and forces the player to rely on ear and intuition. It creates a drone, a natural resonance where the open strings ring out against the fretted notes, creating a shimmering, pianistic quality that a standard tuning simply cannot replicate. It forces the guitar to occupy a frequency range usually reserved for orchestral instruments. Then the mellotron enters. John Paul Jones is the unsung hero of this album, and his work here is his magnum opus. He isn't just holding down chords. He is orchestrating a string section on a keyboard that was notoriously difficult to keep in tune. The strings you hear are the sound of tape loops inside the Mellotron M400, adding a ghostly, slightly detuned warmth that a real orchestra would have made too polished. And look at the drums. John Bonham, the man known for hitting harder than God, plays the first section with a sensitivity that would make a jazz drummer weep. He is serving the song, not his ego. The dynamics here are the key. The song breathes, it swells. It creates tension not through distortion, but through harmonic complexity. When the heavy section finally hits, that massive G major explosion, it feels earned. It's a release of emotional pressure, not just a volume knob turn. This is compositional maturity. This is the sound of a band that knows silence is as loud as a Marshall stack. Then we move to Over the Hills and Far Away, a track that serves as a masterclass in the acoustic to electric transition. Thousands of bands have tried to copy this formula, but none have the swing. The secret ingredient here is the syncopation in the opening acoustic riff. It's not straight. It pushes and pulls against the beat, playing games with the listener's internal metronome. It is Celtic folk filtered through the haze of the British blues boom. But here is a detail for the gearheads. When the electrics kick in, listen to the tone. It's brighter, snappier. There is a long-standing debate about whether Page used a Fender Stratocaster for the solo and overdubs here instead of his trademark Les Paul. The attack of the notes, that quack in the second and fourth pickup positions, strongly suggests single coils. It's Page painting with a different brush, prioritizing articulation over sustain. When the full band kicks in, Bonham is playing a groove that is fundamentally funk-based, disjointed yet locked in. The bass line mimics the guitar riff but adds a funky syncopation that makes the track danceable in a way heavy rock shouldn't be. The solo is one of Page's most lyrical moments. He isn't shredding for the sake of speed. He is phrasing. He leaves gaps. He lets the notes sustain. He is speaking a language. And notice the coda, the fading outro that drifts into an atmospheric, reverb-drenched landscape. This was a sophisticated studio fade, suggesting the music continues in some other dimension. Now, we have to address the track that purists scoff at, but musicians analyze with dropped jaws, the crunge. This is a joke, but it's a joke only virtuosos can tell. It is a pastiche of James Brown funk, specifically inspired by Take It to the Bridge, but it is intentionally broken. The time signature shifts are a nightmare for the uninitiated. Bars of 9/8, 4/4, and 5/4 thrown into a blender. It creates a stuttering, stumbling feel that is incredibly difficult to replicate. Bonham is practically daring you to find the one. They are deconstructing funk, taking the tightest genre in existence and injecting it with loose, sloppy English rock and roll swagger. Listen to the synthesizer. Jones is using an ARP 2500, or potentially his VCS3, to create those squelchy, brass-like stabs. They aren't trying to be cool in the traditional sense, they are trying to be weird. It takes balls to put this on a platinum record. It is a studio jam that got out of hand, capturing the band's humor and their refusal to take themselves too seriously. Plant's ad-libs, "Where's that confounded bridge?" are a direct nod to the fact that the song technically has no bridge. It's meta-commentary before that was even a concept in rock. Dancing Days often gets overlooked, but purely from a guitarist's perspective, it is a treasure trove of discordance. The main riff relies on a sliding interval that sounds wrong to the diatonic ear, a tritone friction that creates an unsettling, slinky vibe. It sounds like a snake moving through grass. This track was actually the first one recorded for the sessions, and you can hear the excitement. The mix is dense, almost claustrophobic compared to the Rain song. Page's slide work here is not the weeping blues of the Delta. It is sharp, metallic, and aggressive. He's likely using the Danelectro here for that biting, hollow tone. The lyrics are celebratory, but the music suggests something more sinister, a tension beneath the surface of the summer fun. It's Zeppelin doing pop, but doing it with a sneer. Dear Macker is often called a failed reggae song. That's a lazy interpretation by people who don't understand drumming. It's a heavy rock drummer's interpretation of a 1950s doo-wop progression played with a reggae backbeat. The title is a Cockney pun. Jamaica? No, she went of her own accord. Which tells you everything about the intent. They were having fun. But look at the engineering. Bonham's drum sound here is massive. The snare drum sounds like a cannon shot in a cathedral. This is the result of placing microphones at a distance to capture the room ambiance, a technique Kramer and Page perfected. Bonham isn't playing a traditional reggae one-drop. He is playing a rock backbeat with a massive swing. The result is a groove that feels like it's dragging, heavy and lethargic in the most intoxicated, pleasurable way possible. It's a groove you feel in your hips, not your head. The guitar work is sparse, allowing the rhythm section to carry the weight. It's a risk. It's the band stepping completely outside their comfort zone and succeeding not by imitating a genre, but by warping it to fit their own massive sound. But if we are talking about atmosphere, about the dark, mystical underbelly of the Zeppelin mythos, we must bow at the altar of No Quarter. This is John Paul Jones's masterpiece. The electric piano is a Hohner Electra piano, not a Rhodes or Wurlitzer as often misidentified. It is run through the filter of an EMS VCS3 synthesizer, the Putney, to create that underwater, wobbling texture. It creates a texture that is suffocatingly beautiful. The song is heavy, but there is almost no distortion on the main riff. The heaviness comes from the intervals, the chromatic descent, and the sheer emptiness of the arrangement. And then there is the fuzz. The guitar solo in No Quarter is a lesson in tone. Page uses a distinct compressed fuzz, likely a direct injection, DI heavily treated, or a specific unit like the tone bender, that sounds like a razor blade cutting through velvet. It's restrained, melodic, and haunting. This track anticipates the textures of post-punk and goth that wouldn't exist for another decade. It is the sound of a bad trip in a damp cellar, and it is glorious. Bonham's drumming is sparse, accentuating the offbeats, leaving massive pockets of air for the synthesizer to swirl around. Finally, we arrive at the ocean. The title refers to the sea of fans they saw from the stage. This is the celebration. This is the victory lap. The intro is iconic, Bonham's voice counting in, "We've done 4 already, but now we're steady." And then they went 1, 2, 3, 4. It breaks the fourth wall. It reminds you that these are 4 guys in a room. The riff is iconic, but count it. It's in 15/8 time. Or if you want to be pedantic, it alternates between a bar of 4/4 and a bar of 7/8. It creates a hiccup in the groove that catches the ear every single time. Most bands would straighten that out to make it radio-friendly. Zeppelin keeps the limp because the limp makes it swagger. It forces you to nod your head in a way that feels disjointed but right. And the ending? The doo-wop mashup? That is the final middle finger to seriousness. It's the band laughing. They have just taken you on a journey through folk, funk, reggae, heavy metal, and symphonic rock, and they end it with a 1950s high school prom vocal harmony. It is the sound of four men who know they are the best band on the planet, having the time of their lives. Here is the final piece of trivia that separates the tourists from the locals. The song, Houses of the Holy, is not on the album Houses of the Holy. It was recorded during these sessions but was bumped off due to the similarity in feel to other tracks, likely Dancing Days. It wouldn't surface until Physical Graffiti 2 years later. This is the level of quality control they had. A title track, a certified banger, was deemed surplus because the flow of the album mattered more than individual songs. Houses of the Holy is a masterpiece not because it perfected the Zeppelin sound, but because it expanded the vocabulary of rock music. It proved that heavy is not about gain stages and decibels. It is about emotional weight and compositional density. It showed that a rock band could be eclectic without losing its identity. Every instrument on this record is recorded with a specific, distinct character. The separation in the mix allows you to hear the grease on the kick drum pedal, the scrape of the pick on the strings, the breath in the vocal cords. This album is the sound of four musicians who have mastered their instruments to the point where they no longer have to think about technique. They are simply channeling. It is raw, it is sophisticated, and it is undeniably, aggressively real. In an era of grid-aligned drums, quantized bass lines, and pitch-corrected vocals, listening to Houses of the Holy is like watching a lion hunt. It's dangerous, it's messy, and it is the most beautiful thing you will ever witness. It is a challenging listen, and that is why it endures. It demands your attention, it demands your respect, and nearly 50 years later, it still sounds like the future. If you can't hear that, check your pulse. You might be dead.